Hi, Magnus. Thank you so much and great to have you.
Hey, great to be invited. Very excited to talk.
Thank you so much. So, what is happening with Antler in the last year? And there's so many great news coming out. So, we want to hear what has been happening with Antler and yeah, just getting started.
Yeah, no, it's obviously been a very kind of hard year for a lot of people, but in the space that we are in, I think it's really has been the time for exceptional people to step up and continue innovating and creating new jobs and solving important problems. So yeah, we've been helping a few thousand founders. We invested in and helped build, I guess, a couple of hundred startups since the pandemic started. Doing that all across the globe in Europe, in the Americas, in Asia, in Africa, in Australia, and yeah, just very excited about supporting exceptional people and building something which is solving a big problem and helping them scale. And yeah, we've been continuing to doing that at scale this year.
Yes, I heard Germany, I think Berlin, you expanded in Berlin, and was the South Africa included too?
In terms of Berlin, yes, we launched earlier this year. The first program just started, but obviously it's been a bit of a COVID spike there recently. So it's been kind of an online, offline hybrid program. But now a lot of people are, back in the office there. Everyone gets COVID tested every day before they come into the office. And we've been managing to, run things, I think, fairly well there. Even with a bit of a surge in COVID cases. And, obviously very, very excited to launch in Central Europe out of Berlin. It's just a tremendous amount of entrepreneurial talent there, some of the world's best engineers, some really great ideas, and also a history of building companies that, solve big problems and contribute a lot of value globally. So, yeah, very, very excited about that.
Yeah, and also Germany is a great market. To be launched in Europe, especially. So,
yeah.
Give us a little bit of outlook how 2020 was actually for Antler, especially with the uncertainty that was actually coming with COVID, and when COVID hit, how much and what kind of impact did it have on Antler, and how did you deal with that?
Yes, I think there were two parts to that, right? So there were two parts with two parts. So first of all, this is a quite different crisis, right? We're not talking about a financial crisis or anything like that. You're talking about people getting really sick and dying all across the globe. So that was kind of number one priority for us, is ensuring the safety of our people, the safety of our founders, the safety of their portfolio companies, and not only that, but also kind of family and friends and all that. We're stuck all across the globe since we operate across most continents, and some people were in a worse situation than others. So we spent a lot of time just ensuring that we could support each other and get through that from a health perspective. Then the second aspect of that, in terms of the platform, is ensuring that you can continue business operations, where, for us, it's really supporting great founders, build great companies. And we put a lot of effort into tech. We put a lot of effort into ensuring that we can go on and offline depending on the situation. So in some markets we run purely online programs almost since the pandemic started. For example, in the US, where we're now slowly getting back to in-person. But then in other places like Singapore, Australia, we've been running more or less in-person programs throughout the whole pandemic. So you get to see very, very different ways of solving this, but it's been working really well. So that's kind of one aspect, is what we did with the platform. And the other aspect is then all of our portfolio companies, right? And the founders that we're working with. And obviously, again, going back to the health aspect, but then second, back in February, March, April last year, you really didn't know how this would pan out from economics and investment perspective, right? So there was a real worry that really amazing entrepreneurs working in really great companies might run out of money, or they might not get through a period of less revenue. Now, I think what ended up happening is, in Q2 last year, a lot of people were just getting their act together, and I think a lot of investment activity stopped. It was harder to sign customers, all of this, but we focus just a lot on like how can you get through and ensure you have the adequate runway so that when things starts picking up, you will be in a position to really grow. So we had a number of calls with all the founders across the globe on the call, shared a lot of learnings, made a lot of introductions. We upped our investment in a few companies, and then very rapidly in Q3 and especially Q4 last year, you can see, if anything, the investment activity and the willingness for companies, customers, consumer to use new types of products is just going through the roof. So you kind of went from that kind of business crisis environment in the early part of the year to really getting a lot of tailwinds for most of our businesses. Obviously, there are some industries still that are heavily offline and are struggling, but in general, that's what we saw happen. And of course, now going into 2021, it's just a tremendous amount of momentum building around supporting great founders, realizing their dreams. So, from a health world perspective, obviously it's been an incredible challenging year, but from what we're doing, I think if anything, it's more important than ever.
Well, that's great. In terms of the portfolio companies, if you can tell us what has been most like trendy in 2021 and also 2020, later quarter of 2020, and also in terms of like the investments stream. I think VCs were pumping so much money into startups. Obviously, there was like so much hike in that. And you were the epicenter of that. Like, holding all these like startup companies and the founders, so you would have a better stats.
Yeah. So I think first of all, we're kind of right now, at least, we're kind of entering into a period where once again, I think one can kind of go in there and innovate within all industries, like even kind of travel, communication, and so on are kind of slowly starting to pick up. So I think it's you have all of those things that you had before the pandemic, which is still there now. What has happened, obviously, there are some areas that are growing insanely fast, like education, supply chain logistics, all types of e-commerce marketplaces, health tech, way of work, the way of working. We made a number of really, I think, interesting investments in that space, which are growing really fast. Now, somewhat related, but probably also just because they are incredibly important and major trends. You also recently obviously seen even more investments and interesting solutions coming out in the sustainability, climate change space. And lastly, which is an area you obviously know a lot of, is the blockchain space. We have some tremendously interesting companies that are utilizing that across different types of problems and growing insanely fast. And yeah, it's been really, really cool to see that resurgence. I've been investing a bit and been involved in the space since about 2016. And obviously there was major growth beginning 2017 up until beginning 2018. Then there's been less, obviously a tremendous amount of innovation going on all across the globe, but it's been less in the popular mind. And then in the beginning of last year, it once again started growing a lot from a public perspective. And what that has led to is obviously a lot of kind of capital going into new, really interesting projects and a lot of innovation we've seen over the last year, which are solving big issues within, from anything to logistics, to art, to the financial industry. So very interesting.
I mean, given that kind of like outlook of what actually happened in 2020 and early 2021, what trends in technology and in startups do you estimate that would actually come out of this year and next year? I mean, you mentioned e-commerce, you mentioned financial industry that are kind of like scaling, very heavily, or even like education. But like in what kind of like stream now we see like there's so many drop in, for example, audio. Social media like Clubhouse and what do you think that the next trend would be? Is it going to be in this stream? Is it going to be in artificial intelligence? Is it going to be in VR? Since you're dealing with a lot of those innovative startups and founders.
Yeah, so so we in Antler are not really kind of theme and trend investors. But I obviously have kind of my own opinions on these types of things. What we do in Antler is observing kind of a few major trends. So first of all, we want to invest in just incredible people, no matter what they're working on, whether they're solving health tech issues or ed tech issues or building a new game, right? So we just want to support exceptional people in whatever kind of dream or problem they want to solve, and then we provide access to the right advisors within that space that knows way more about that space than we do. I think so. That's kind of fundamentally our focus. Now, in terms of the trends, there are a few things that I find fascinating. So first of all, the world for the very first time ever is truly global, right? And COVID itself is a manifestation of that. How a virus could spread so incredibly rapidly and affect the entire world in a short time. If you think about that from a business perspective, it took the airline industry about 68 years to get 50 million customers. It took Pokemon Go 14 days. And if you look at kind of Clubhouse and other fast-moving kind of consumer products, but also B2B products like Atlassian and others, you can really build very fast-growing businesses for the whole world within B2B, B2C, also within deep tech now due to rapid prototyping and other solutions and outsourcing and manufacturing. So you have that kind of major globalization effect that never existed before. Secondly, you mentioned a lot of the technologies that are now coming to the market, right? We used to have a century or a decade that was affected by one technological change. It could be the onset of the computer, a new type of boat, a new type of metal. So if you look at the human history, you have this kind of big periods of time that are affected by one technological change. Now we live in a time where you have multiple groundbreaking technologies hitting the market at the same time, from blockchain to artificial intelligence to biotechnology, genome technology, IoT. It's just incredible. It's like about a dozen of these insanely advanced technologies that can literally disrupt any industry out there. So that I think is the second major trend. Third major trend is the cost of building a business has gone down drastically, right? So Azam, you and I, we could sit together tonight and we could build an app or another product and launch it globally within a couple of days. And we could do that probably at a cost of a few $1,000s. While if you want to build a global business only a few years back, you would have to kind of buy a bunch of servers, you would need to hire salespeople, you would need to connect into logistics network, or build it yourself sometimes because it didn't even exist. So the cost of building a global business up until quite recently, before the onset of the cloud and other solutions, was $25 million plus, right? So it's like, so those three trends just means to me that any single industry out there is slowly going to be disrupted. And yeah, there are going to be some trends this year and last year where you see certain, industries being disrupted faster than other, like education, supply chain, financial industry, and so on. but that will keep on changing. But the fundamental, I think, truth are those kind of three trends I just went through, combined with, if you just support exceptional people who are excited about solving problems, utilizing these trends, then you'll be part of doing something very impactful.
Well, two questions here. You mentioned about how fast the technology is enhancing, and even like keeping up with that. I mean, education-wise and intelligence-wise is like really hard. So how do you educate your investors, which is, I mean, very fundamental to invest in a company that, I mean, we see entrepreneurs are very innovative. They come, for example, like in blockchain or DeFi, and then and also we have the classic kind of like VC, they don't even understand the structure, how Bitcoin works, for example. How do you educate that? How do you bridge this kind of like knowledge?
Yeah, so I think, we have an advantage there that if you pick almost any industry, we've been lucky to support a number of founders that are working within the space, right? So, if you're an investor, or let's say you're an LP into Antler and you're interested in the blockchain space, we have some incredible founders working in that space that are right at the kind of forefront of innovation. If you're thinking about fintech, we have supported 30, 40 fintech companies that were built over the last couple of years who are at the forefront of that. So the way we think about it is, if you as an investor want to learn about a space, the best way to do that is to spend time with the people who are actually at the leading front of innovating. So we put together these communities, we call them sector circles, around each of these industries with people who are working on solving problems within that area. Then out of that comes a lot of different insights, which are very exciting for investors, for advisors, for companies, and so on. I think more importantly, though, it's also very interesting for the founders, because being a founder sometimes is a lonely affair, and if you can talk to people who are innovating within the same space as you are in, but are not competitors, they might be in another geography, or they might be working on something which is adjacent or in a different part of the value chain. That's so incredibly meaningful, because they are going through the exact same type of problems as you are doing. And I literally, it's one of my top advice to founders out there, also investors, which was your original question, is to speak to other people who are doing the same thing that you are doing, because that's by far the best way to learn. Obviously, on top of that, there's a lot of kind of great books and blogs and Twitter channels and all of that you can follow, but nothing is by learning from the people who are actually doing it day to day.
And most of these investors that are within Antler, I mean, you included, in terms of like impact investors and like bold ones, and the ones that, they want to just like invest in high tech and like maybe some trends. And so how do you kind of like classify this kind of like spectrum of investors?
So I think in terms of impact, there are three lenses we look at. So A is, how are we having impact as a platform, right? So if you think about what we are doing, we're helping to solve problems. That's one area of impact. Like, we have companies who work on using AI to analyze images and find diseases. We have a company who work on detecting lung cancer through a breath test, which they now repurpose to detecting COVID. We have people who work on carbon reduction. We have people working on reducing socioeconomic differences, banking the unbanked, providing healthcare advice to people who don't have it. So that's one aspect, right? This is like solving real problems. Now, if you think about that bucket, the way we look at kind of tracking impact and look at impact is like, how impactful are they at that area, right? Like, if you're working on, detecting lung cancer through a breath test, you're not going to measure the carbon impact of that company, right? You're going to measure the health impact of that company. If you're working on, a savings platform, or for for your carbon footprint, then you're going to look at carbon, but you're not going to look at the number of lives you save, right? Which you will do with the other companies. So I think for these specific problems, it's very hard to create one set of KPIs to measure them on. You need to find out which UN SDG they're solving, and then based off of that, you start tracking the impact, right? So I think solving specific problems and tracking the impact of solving those problems is one major area. Number two is the impact of kind of innovation itself, right? Which is things as job creation, value creation, education, creating higher paid jobs for, especially in emerging markets, but also in the developed economy where people can go from a lower paid, less fulfilling job to a more exciting
labor market.
Yeah, exactly. So we track all of these things. Like what's that? How many jobs do we create per year? How many? What's our impact on the economy? How many people do we have help educate? Like all of these things. That's, I think, the second bucket. Now the third bucket, which I think is also incredibly important, is it's almost like we call it the democratization of entrepreneurship, or like the diversity aspect of things, right? Like, so if you think about it out there, like take a simple thing, or it's not simple, but take a thing like gender equality, right? Like 50% of the world's talent is female, or possibly more, but about 50-50 of the world's talent is like male and female. I think something like 2.3% or low single digit of all venture capital globally goes to female founders. Now,
and why is that?
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, why is that? I think it's due to that. I think there are historical reasons for why it's like this. It's the path people take. It's people invest in people who are more similar to themselves. They tend to be kind of more
Right. Mm-hmm.
white male entrepreneurs and all these types of things up until now. Now, there are two ways to look at this, right? One way to look at this is it's completely unfair and needs to be fixed, which I think is, completely right? It's the same with kind of underrepresented groups, minorities, socioeconomic differences, and all of that. Like it should be fixed from a fairness perspective. Now, the other way to look at it is it should be fixed because there's all of this amazing untapped talent out there that is not innovating, right? So, due to this kind of skewed statistics, there's just so much amazing talent and so many amazing individuals that perhaps because they grew up in a slum in Mumbai instead of growing up on the west coast of the US, or because they're a woman instead of a man, or because they have a different skin color, or whatever it is, don't get the same opportunities. Because like building a business is really hard, right? If you have an existing network, if you have access to that first bit of capital, these types of things, it makes it a little bit easier. It's still not easy. It's still incredibly hard, but it makes it easier. So our thinking is that if we can provide equal access to everyone, and we select people based on intrinsics, we can more accurately access the global available talent pool. And that has two positive effects. A, it increases the level of fairness, so it promotes diversity and helps with that aspect of things. The other advantage is that we can access all of this amazing talent that the world is currently not accessing, and invest in them, and through that deliver great returns to our investors, right? So it kind of has both an impact and it will deliver stronger returns. So what we have tried to do is to build a platform where, if you don't have that network coming in, we will provide that network. If you don't have that first bit of capital, we will provide that capital. So we have the ability to work with anyone as long as they're intrinsically strong, right? And what that has led to is some quite interesting statistics. So about 40% of our portfolio companies, 40, has a female co-founder. About 80 of those portfolio companies have a female CEO co-founder. We build companies with people from 70 nations, all socioeconomic backgrounds. We're still not fully representing the global available talent pool, right? We're far away from that. We have a ton of work to do still. Everyone does. But that's a huge advantage because we can one individual can change the world. And, that can be, a woman growing up in India with parents who doesn't have much income, or it could be, someone who grew up in the US and was lucky to go to all of the world's best schools. But if that person doesn't get the opportunity, that's a humongous loss to the world.
Like, I believe the explanation that you had for the investment in the VCs, I would say it's a smart investing. It's not even impact. I mean, impact is included. It's a great way of investing that I think those KPIs are like great and like obviously working for Antler. But since Antler is investing in entrepreneurs and their personalities, if it was 12, I must ask this question. If it was 13 years ago, someone like Elon Musk would come to you and says, I want to put people on Mars. I want to build the rockets. Would you invest in his company? Would you even say, oh, this is crazy? No.
So it's so when we look at entrepreneurs, we look at, do they have a spike? Do they have drive? And do they have grit? Now, if you look at spiky characters, like great founders are typically quite spiky characters, meaning they're tremendously great at something. And then there are other areas where they are less strong. They're typically not average on everything. If you look at Elon Musk, he's spiky, like crazy spiky, right? So yeah, check. Second one is drive. Drive is a combination of passion and the ability to execute. If you look at Elon Musk, he has an insane amount of drive, and you can just feel it with being around him. And then the third aspect is grit. And I don't know how many rockets they blew up in SpaceX before they managed to get one to fly, but it was quite a lot, and he had to he put all his money plus put a big loan on his house to just make it work. Same with Tesla, right? I mean, always went bankrupt a bunch of times. Yeah, so he has insane amount of grit. So yes, we would invest in him because of that. Not because we wanted to send people to Mars. We fundamentally believe that ideas are important, but less important than those characteristics of the founder and the ability of that founder to build a strong team around them. Then we work with that team to help validate the business model, right? So in this specific case, putting people on Mars, if he came to me with advice on that, or wanting advice on that, I wouldn't be able to tell him much. But we have, great people who are part of our advisory network, who've been working at ESA before, NASA before. Now obviously we have people who worked at SpaceX before and these places. So we can connect him as a founder or her as a founder to all the relevant competency centers across the globe. But where we are experts personally is finding incredible founder talent and ensuring that they put together a great team. And then we have people in our network who can help validate the business model.
You mentioned the advisory team that you guys have. I believe, I looked at the portfolio. There are more than 100 people. What exactly are the role? Is it part-time or full-time role? And how, in what circumstances the founders can get in touch with the advisors?
Yeah, great question. So it's more than 500 people. And anyone who listens to this who want to be in our advisory network, just reach out to me at magnus@antler.co or anyone else in Antler, because the role is super cool. Literally what we're saying is that if you're a great I don't know, professor or leader or entrepreneur or anyone who has a very specific skill set, and you're somewhat passionate about supporting great entrepreneurs. You might also be a bit of an angel investor, so you write some angel tickets. We can put you in front of highly selected founders that we're working with within your field of interest and expertise. If we don't find anyone like that, you won't be contacted, but you'll still be invited to all the Antler demo days and everything else that we do. So it's a quite attractive position, because literally we spend a lot of time finding exceptional people that are working within their specific area of interest on innovation. So it's a win-win. And then how do the founders get in contact with them? Well, so we have our internal tech platform where we have all of these advisors, so you can very easily search up on them. So in your example, let's say talk about the space industry, you make that search, you find 4 or 5 people, and then we will do kind of a two-way connection. Say, hey, ex-leader in NASA, do you want to talk to these exceptional people in India that are working on innovating with this specific space industry, or do you have other people that you can put them in contact with that can provide them input and help? So that's how it works. So it's literally just win-win. It's not names on a slide. It's not, people are just there. It's really fundamentally set up to have that specific actionable impact of helping people validate their business model. And what the advisors get back is the ability to invest early on in companies within their area of expertise and know-how that they can combine with their own friends and family deal flow.
It's basically about being more practical. So what is next for Antler? Are you expanding more throughout the world this year? And what are like the latest that we need to be tuned?
Yeah, so I mean, as we, we're looking at really the most exciting, innovative ecosystems in the world, existing ones and emerging ones. There's, if you go on that website, you can see that there are a few that we're in quite a few already, but there is a number of ones that are not there yet. However, we don't compromise on quality, so we will only set up in a location if we have exceptional people running it. So that's really what it's up to for us. Is we're not in a rush. We want to be present in ecosystems so we can find the right people to run it, and then hopefully through doing that we can be even more helpful to our founders to help them expand and help them get access to those type of people where they want to expand from the US to Asia, or from Asia to the Middle East, or from the Middle East to Europe, or whatever it is.
And last question, if you want to send a message to the founders and exceptional people or exceptional personalities out there, what that be?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch, but hey, if you're thinking about building something and solving a big problem, I don't think there's any founder ever who regretted doing it too early. So kind of make the decision to do it. Once you made the decision to do it, then be serious about it. Like, don't just do it to learn. Don't just, do it because it's cool to be an entrepreneur, but be very serious about it. Go in there with failure not being an option. I'm not saying that failure is not okay. People fail all the time and then they succeed later. That's okay. But you can't go in there with that type of mindset. You got to go in there and with the mindset that you're really going to succeed on solving this very specific problem. In which case, if you have decided to do it and you're very serious about it, you will succeed much more often than not. And if Antler can be helpful on that journey, just go to antler.co, and it's very easy to apply. Just click the red apply button.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thanks, Azam. Great
Thank
to talk
you.
to you.